If a great deal seems to be at stake for the humans fighting at Troy in Book 1 of the Iliad, what's at stake for the gods who are involved in all of this? To answer this question, I'd like to turn to the end of Book 1 of the Iliad, where Thetis makes good on her promise to help her son out. Remember, the plan was that Thetis would use her influence with Zeus, go talk to him, and convince him to rally the Trojans so that they could push the Greeks back to their ships and start losing. Only at this point would the Greeks realize what a mistake they had made in insulting Achilles by taking away his girl Briseis. So far, so good. Thetis goes to visit Zeus, and when she's talking to him, Hera overhears what they're saying. Zeus, of course, agrees, swearing a solemn oath that he will, in fact, help out the Trojans, thus hurting the Greeks and, strangely enough, helping Achilles. Thetis leaves. Afterwards, Hera questions Zeus about what he's been up to. He admits that he has indeed been talking to Thetis, but Hera chides him about this and gives him a tough time. The conflict escalates from there, and before you know it, Zeus is threatening physical harm to Hera. This is when Hephaestus gets involved. Remember the blacksmith god who has lame heels? Hephaestus at this point starts amusing the other gods, telling them not to quarrel, acting as a serving boy, carrying nectar, remember the gods don't drink wine, around to the gods who are feasting. Why is this funny? It's funny because Hephaestus is lame in both of his legs, and the gods thought it was funny that he would hobble around the room acting as a servant when he was really a god. And this reveals important things about the Greeks' attitude towards physical appearance and handicap. They tended to think these things were funny and weren't quite as sensitive to these sorts of things as we are now. Which gets us to Book 2 and the episode with Thersites. At the beginning of Book 2, Zeus, in order to trick Agamemnon into going back into war, sent him a false dream saying that today was his day for victory. Agamemnon tried to rally his troops, and he did so using reverse psychology. He told them, well, I guess if you don't want to be here and you don't have a stake in this war, you should all just go home. He was expecting that they would say, no, Agamemnon, we'll fight for you. But instead, they all ran back to their ships and started loading up their gear so they could leave. Well, with some cajoling from the other Greek commanders, they were finally able to rally the troops to come back up and get their gear and head back into battle. And it's at this point the character of Thersites is introduced. Thersites is a Greek commoner and not one of the nobles, not one of the heroes. And he's described in the following way. They had all dropped to the sand and were sitting there except for one man, Thersites, a blathering fool and a rabble-rouser. This man had a repertory of choice insults he used at random to revile the nobles, saying anything he thought the soldiers would laugh at. He was also the ugliest soldier at the siege of Troy. Bow-legged, walked with a limp, his shoulders slumped over his caved-in chest, and up top, scraggly fuzz sprouting on his pointy head. Achilles especially hated him, as did Odysseus. It's because he was always provoking them. Now he was screaming abuse at Agamemnon. Achaeans were angry with him and indignant, but that didn't stop him from rousing the warlord. What happens after this? Odysseus shuts him up. How does he do this? By whacking him on the back with the staff he's holding him, causing him great anguish. And the soldiers laugh at this. But let's stop and explore this episode for a minute. What does Thersites say that arouses such anger in Odysseus? Well, Thersites says that the Greeks really shouldn't have any interest in this war because they don't have any trouble with the Trojans. And in fact, it's Agamemnon's problem with the Trojans and Menelaus' problem with the Trojans that's really caused this war. Meanwhile, Greek soldiers are dying left and right, only to collect loot for Agamemnon that he keeps for himself. This speech sound familiar? It should. It sounds a lot like the speech Achilles gave in Book 1 when he was protesting his involvement with the war to Agamemnon. What's the difference between Thersites and Achilles? Well, their status for one. Achilles is a basileus. He's also a hero, and he's good-looking. Thersites is a common man and one of the soldiers on the ground. He's also described as aiskistos. And aiskistos means a couple of things. One, it means most ill-favored in Greek. And it also simply means ugly. I submit to you that this is why Thersites is treated differently. His status is different, but also his physical appearance is different. And the Greeks tended to equate physical beauty with moral goodness, and ugliness with moral wickedness. Now to Book 3. In Book 3, Paris decides to end the struggle once and for all by suggesting a duel. Everyone agrees, and a sacrifice is made to seal the deal. During this contest between Paris and Menelaus, there's no question who wins. Menelaus is clearly the victor. However, Aphrodite is able to snatch Paris away from certain death by whisking him away in a cloud and taking him off to his bedroom. This episode gets us to a powerful point about Helen's motivations here. While Helen is watching the battle from the walls, she gets a chance to introduce some of the Greek heroes to Priam as she watches them down on the battlefield. However, when Paris is whisked away from trouble by Aphrodite, Aphrodite then approaches Helen, asking her to go to the bedroom of Paris to comfort him in his time of need. Helen refuses to go back to Paris's bedroom, and she teases Aphrodite about this, saying she doesn't want to be her stooge anymore. However, Aphrodite pressures her to go back to the bedroom in the following way. She says this, "Don't vex me, bitch, or I may let go of you and hate you as extravagantly as I love you now. I can make you repulsive to both sides, you know, Trojans and Greeks, and then where will you be?" Here it's made clear that Helen is actually pretty alone and feels that her position in this whole conflict is actually pretty tender. So she returns to the bedroom, and even then, she's not ready to greet Paris with open arms. She mocks him and says that he's not the man that Menelaus, her true husband, is. Still, Paris is not trying to hear it. Paris convinces her to come to bed with him, and she does it, but it seems like because she knows it's inevitable rather than because it's something she wants to do. In Book 4, there's a council of the gods. Here we find out that Hera and Athena, along with Poseidon, are in fact pro-Greek. And this only makes sense because neither Hera nor Athena were chosen by Paris to be the fairest. Zeus seems to be pro-Trojan, along with Apollo and Aphrodite, but in reality, Zeus is pro-Zeus. The gods decide that what needs to happen is the humans need to break their oaths. They send Athena down to tell Pandarus to shoot an arrow that will hit Menelaus, thus breaking the truce. Ares helps out the Trojans, while Athena follows the Greeks.